Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of the business side of music. This week we have on board the show Janette Barrios, who's the Director of Marketing for the company Symphonic Distribution. She's the Director of Marketing for the company. She originally hails from Puerto Rico. She got her start in the music industry by joining Symphonic Distribution as a marketing assistant. With her involvement, the company's internet, social media, and public presence grew impressively. After initial success, Janette was promoted to Director of Marketing, where she has continued to help advance the company in new markets with strategic online advertising and by creating new marketing opportunities for Symphonic clients and partners. Additionally, she has created an educational outreach partnership with speaking engagements at Full Sail University, Sanford Brown, and many more. Symphonic Distribution is a digital music supervisor. It was launched in late 2006. They deliver music from independent record labels and musicians to online retailers such as Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, Napster, Deezer, Pandora, Amazon, Beatport, and more. Today, the company distributes music to hundreds of retail and streaming platforms for over 10,000 record labels and artists worldwide while maintaining a personalized approach to distribution. The company continues to develop new technologies in the form of in-house systems and have expanded their offerings to include video distribution, publishing administration, neighboring rights, marketing, sync licensing, mastering, web and graphic design, YouTube monetization, SoundCloud monetization, and Piracy Protection. Janette, sounds like you guys have your hands full these days. How's it going?
Hey there, how are you?
Good.
Yep, as you know it. But super glad, obviously, to have, to be on the show today. And yeah, just kind of looking forward to being able to help out all your listeners and independent musicians and record labels out there.
So I think when I read the bio of the company, it explains it kind of in a little bit of a minutia detail, but let's broaden the scope a little bit of the focus of Symphonic Distribution. What is it that you do for the independent artist that I guess in layman's terms they would actually need to help advance their career?
Yeah. So basically, like you kind of like you mentioned, in your overview. So we're a digital music distributor. So basically, if you're an independent artist or independent record label, and you'd like to get your music on online stores, we are that platform that can help you out. For the beginning part of Symphonic, when we started back in 2006, we had a big focus in record labels, just record labels. Our CEO and founder, he has a background in electronic music, so a lot of that, like that initial audience and clients that we had were focused on electronic music. But nowadays, we distribute all sorts of genres. And the thing is that when it comes to this, to distribution, a lot of, like artists, typically you can't just go to an iTunes or to Spotify and, want to upload your music. You have to go through a distributor. So nowadays that's kind of like, let's say if we were going to say like our bread and butter, it's distribution. We have a really vast network. If I were to say like one of the things that we, we have one of our strengths would be, the network of stores that we distribute to. We have over 100 stores that we deliver to. Not only here in the U.S., but similarly, like here, everybody in the U.S. knows about Pandora and Spotify. There's different countries and territories that also have similar services that are sometimes as big as Spotify. So we deliver, to Asia, also like India. So that's kind of like one of our biggest strengths. And then in addition to that, then we also help you collect additional royalties that music is making. Because Nowadays, basically music makes 13 different types of royalties. So we've set these other services in place so you can collect that additional, money that's being generated, and then also being able to exploit it as well. That's where like those services like YouTube monetization and SoundCloud monetization come into play. But I know that's kind of like a little bit of a longer, story there, but yeah, that's kind of like the essence, and we also are really strong advocates, in terms of like independent music, because we ourselves are an independent company. We've been bootstrapped since the beginning, so we've had no investment whatsoever. And even though we're kind of like a more boutique firm, we are very competitive in terms of other competitors that are out there, so our pricing stacks up pretty nicely compared to what's out there.
So let me ask you this. We hear, and this is a conversation I have with quite a few of our guests that are on the show, a record deal or a major artist, an artist signed to a major record label versus an independent artist. The record business, as we have said many times on the show, it's not what it used to be. Do you feel that from what you have to offer that the independent artist has as much of an opportunity to be successful? Now, being successful is a broad stroke of the paintbrush, because that's many different levels. But do you feel that the independent artist has the same opportunity to be as successful as an artist signed to a label?
I honestly think so, and we have different cases too of different artists that we've worked with. I just feel yes, obviously, like in the past, this whole notion of the record label, they were kind of like the gatekeepers of how things worked. Like let's say if you had a music video, they were the only ones that maybe knew how to get it out there. Same thing with like how to put music up on stores. But nowadays there's a lot of services that, and I feel like there's also so much information online that if you're an artist, obviously today, like in addition to knowing the music industry, then, I feel like the marketing aspect is the most important thing, nowadays. And artists are playing those kind of like those two roles. But I feel that having companies like us that, like you mentioned earlier, like we're really strong advocates too, like in educating our clients and having people like have the tools out there to understand how different, aspects of it works. I think that by artists preparing themselves, and knowing how music makes money, having these things in place that can help them collect that additional royalties. And I feel the flexibility too in terms of an artist is that, if they have, let's say they can push their creativity and give it like kind of like that creative freedom, for it versus, being in a label and you're going to be restricted. And just because you're signed to a label, it doesn't mean that it's like you can now, sit back and, relax because, like to even get the attention of a label, you have to be doing certain things already, and one of those things is, I feel is that relationship that you have with your fans and how you engage with them and the type of content that you put out. So it's still going to be something that, like you're not going to, be guaranteed success. It's just that now you're going to have more, like they're basically going to invest in you, but that same amount that they're investing in you, they're expecting it back, So, and now, like you see a lot of cases of like major artists that are now going into, this whole independent, just like Chance the Rapper, with this whole kind of like movement of like wanting to go the do-it-yourself route. So, obviously there is always this notion of, that, like a record label, it represents success, but I feel that in the long run, if an artist really kind of like educates themselves and really, like kind of like puts some structure into what they're doing and treats, like their career like a business, then their odds, like of being successful definitely increases.
And I think platforms like YouTube that, really they either weren't around 10 years ago or they weren't a viable force 10 years ago. It really has opened the markets for, and like you said, Chance the Rapper, or a lot of artists out there who otherwise couldn't get discovered. They may get signed to a record label, but then they get put on the shelf for the life of their recording contract for whatever reason. You're right. I think the artist, has to take ownership in their career these days, and has to be able to use every asset and every tool, in not only in order to be discovered, but to continue to take, the project and their career onto the next level. One of the things that you mentioned was 13 sets of royalties, and when we come back, we're going to take a little break. We'll come back. I want to go over those, what those different sets of royalties are. I know one of the things we deal with a lot in our end of our company is we deal a lot with sync licensing because we do television production. But let's touch base on that when we come on back. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Bob Bender, president of Bob Bender Productions. Since 1987, our company has provided consultation and artist direction services for recording industry artists. If you're looking to take your music career to the next level, or simply need advice on jump-starting a project or marketing one that's been completed, then we're here to assist you with over 40 years of experience in the entertainment business. We offer individual or group sessions, in person, or over the phone or Skype consultations. Feel free to call our office at 661-326-1140 or email us at info@bobbenderproductions.com for more details.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Bob Bender. We're back with this edition of The Business Side of Music. Today we have Janette Barrios, who's the Director of Marketing from Symphonic Distribution. And we're talking about getting your music out there. One of the things that she mentioned earlier was the different sets of royalties that you go out and obtain or help obtain for the artist. Because let's face it, that's what it's all about now. It's all about the royalties, because we're not selling CDs. We talk about that a lot on the shows. And the downloads aren't even as much as they used to be. It's all streaming now. What different sets of royalties do you focus on?
So basically, there's going to be at least like three to four that we basically kind of like focus on that are the most, kind of like the most relevant today. So just as a little kind of like also like backstory. Obviously, like when it comes to royalties, there's going to be they basically are kind of categorized into two. One is going to be your masters, and then it's also going to be your publishing. So then when it comes to like master generated royalties, these are basically, they are generated from downloads, sales, and streams. And basically as just clear as that, like these are going to be obviously like the ones that you receive from typically from your distributor, because once obviously you have a transaction, your music is sold, your distributor is going to be able to collect these on behalf of you. And these are obviously whenever your music is like on iTunes, Amazon, Google, Rhapsody, any of these. So that's one of those. There's also going to be then on the master side, there's going to be YouTube recording royalties. And basically, like as we know, YouTube is basically the largest website in the world. And in terms of music, it's really important for the discovery aspect of it. So we always, like that's one of the things that we always recommend, people to like artists to be able to have like a channel. And because of how these, like just the aspect of how YouTube generates royalties, it's basically whenever your music is, like it's either if you have a video in your channel that basically, like you'll see some ad revenue from that, like you actually have to activate those ads. And then also there's like the user generated content. So let's say if anybody takes your music and makes, like a video of them, like skateboarding or doing any, like just anything that's user generated, you have the ability also to monetize those those channels that have your music. And that's a piece called Content ID. So basically, whenever there's ad revenue generated, then YouTube allocates the royalties to that master rights holder. And with those, you can basically collect them through like services such as the ones that we have. That is, it's basically YouTube monetization. And that service, what it includes is that it's going to monetize your video. And in addition to that, it's going to generate a fingerprint for your music. So whenever somebody else were to upload your music into their channel, then you also are able to collect revenue from the ad rev that's generated, because then the video is going to be monetized as well. Another one would be neighboring rights. Basically, this is more related to like radio plays. It also is a portion of, like, let's say if your music is being played in SiriusXM or TuneIn, a lot of these like internet radio stations. That's typically when it's when that sort of a royalty is generated, because it's considered kind of like a public performance. So that's really important. And you, like I said, you earn them with Pandora, which is really important because nowadays, like your distributor can deliver to Pandora, but then you're not going to see some of those funds from it. So you have to go out of your way to, to record them, to collect these. And that's a service that we offer as well, neighboring rights. And we definitely recommend it. If you definitely know that your music is being played on the radio, then make sure to have that service in place. And then, like I said, there's like the master side of your royalties, and then there's the publishing side. And for these, one of the first ones is the performance royalties. So these are the ones that are collected by performance rights organizations, or what they call PROs. These PROs are basically established like around the world. There's different territories. So obviously there's one here in the U.S. There's also Canada, the European, and basically these are also collected when your music is publicly broadcasted. So played in internet radio like Pandora, terrestrial radio. If there's any, like, let's say businesses, if you offered your music for sync licensing and your music is being played like in hotels or restaurants or anything like that, that's, that type of royalty is generated as well. And for that one, you typically need to have a publishing administration deal in place. So either publishing means that let's say there's a lot of agencies out there that, like let's say that they want to represent your catalog, for publishing. And that would mean is that they, they own all of those rights, to that music. Or you can do a publishing administration deal with like the ones that Symphonic offers. And what that does is that we administer the catalog for you. But so you as the artist, you still are, considered like the owner of your music, and you still represent it. It's just that we administer it for you, and we collect from 60 territories around the world. Go ahead.
Is there any, when we talk about all the services that you provide, is there a certain parameter or criteria when it comes to an artist? I get pitched things all the time from artists to listen to their music, and most are good. Some of them are pretty amazing. Every once in a while, I get one that I just, there's really nothing you can do for that person because just the level of the quality of the writing or the performance is just, it's just not there. Do you look for a certain type of client, certain type of artist before you agree to take them on?
For at least some of these services, we typically do not have a, like a restriction. The only one that we do have a restriction is for neighboring rights, because typically for those, there is kind of like a cost associated to kind of like, let's say, chase those royalties. So we like to already know that, like that for that specific artist that, for sure he is getting, he or she is getting plays. So we sometimes try to limit it to just record labels, because then it's like a little bit more volume. And at the end of the day, it's like worth everybody's time, because, let's say publishing administration, we do not have a limit for it, like, or restriction for it. And I think it's, like for that, it's something that it's still really important for artists to have, even if, let's say, if you don't have like a publishing, like a PRO established, then you're limiting yourself even to do sync licensing, which is another, like way of making revenue from your music, because those supervisors are going to want to know that, like that this music is free and clear, in order for them to, like feature it. So we don't have any, limitation just on that whole neighboring rights, because it's a little bit more on the volume end, and just to make sure that you do have that, like at least have that music being played, that you already have like a history of it.
I know that with publishing administration, that seems to be the one of the big components we deal with when it comes to songwriters now, is making sure they do have their publishing in place. One of the other things I touched on briefly was because my production company, we deal in television and film, and everything that we do is music-based. Sync licensing, I think that is something that is overlooked a lot. I think I've got a buddy of mine who is a songwriter who had some of his music on a Netflix series, and that's he used to be a songwriter for other artists. He used to be a songwriter for some pretty major recording acts, and of course there's no money in that anymore. So he switched over to television and is writing sync licensing. Explain a little bit about how that works, because one of the things I know that when we talk to some of our clients, we feel that their music is maybe not quite as situated for radio, but would be a good television track or a good film track. Sync licensing is important that they get that done before the project gets out there and gets aired, correct?
Well, at least, so the publishing has to be in place before you can even pitch it. That's basically how it would work. Obviously, go ahead.
I was going to say, in a perfect world, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and at least with us, whenever, let's say because we do offer sync licensing, that's one of the requirements. In order for you to even be approved or even ingested in our system, for licensing, you have to have a PRO in place. And we realized that in several cases that even like as soon as like, let's say, we have like, like a pitch and let's say a song, let's say gets approved, the first thing that they'll ask is for, the publishing details, just to make sure that obviously it's cleared. But yeah, I for any artist that is looking into, into sync licensing and in that realm, then for sure that's one of the first things that they should do. Just have it cleared, because there have been cases and where, a song is approved. Typically, a lot of these requests, when they do come in, they have a very short window for them to get approved. So they'll send us something like, say, something today, and they're like, they want it by the end of the day. They're looking for certain tracks. And, like maybe by the end of the week, they're kind of like going to be reaching a conclusion or a determination on what track they're going to use. So, it's a really, really quick process. And, if suddenly they realize that the track, this artist does not own the track, or, there's a discrepancy there, then, they just really get, just turned off by it. And it affects everything. It affects the ability for maybe that artist to be able to be pitched again. And even for us, even as a relationship, like, it gets affected as well, because it seems like you don't have your stuff together,
Yeah, that's a
in quotation. I even did the floating, like you're.
Yeah, eloquent way to put that. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Welcome back. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music. One of the things I read in your company's bio is Piracy Protection. This is something that is ongoing, especially more so on a global level, it seems. I know that clients that we've had release projects in, let's say the Philippines, that, we're finding out that, the music has been, for lack of better terms, has been bootlegged. How do you go about protecting your client's music out there? How does that piracy protection work?
Yes. So like you probably have seen, we basically have a service that we're basically approved by Google. Google has like a different series of companies that have the ability to then be able to scan, scan the internet for illegal links. So for our service, we realize too that there's going to be certain, let's say certain links that perhaps artists still want to leave up, because it seems like even though it's a really big problem today, it's still trending. There are certain, unfortunately certain genres of music that even prefer to have their music pirated, because it gives them, some form of promotion still. But basically, we'll scan, basically through Google, scan all websites. We do still see a lot of piracy, let's say like in Russia, certain parts of Latin America. And then you get to pick if you still want to have that link being live or not.
Do you see countries, when we talk about music piracy, it used to be physical. It used to be that, they would grab a CD and they would make copies of it and make photocopies of the album cover, and they'd go out and they'd sell it for $3-4 or, whatever the price was that they could get. Digital music, obviously is, in many aspects, is a lot more convenient. Do you see this?
Yeah.
Do you see this continuing to be a problem? I mean, I know that in some countries, I guess my question is, in some countries, they're still not streaming. There's still a lot of purchasing going on. I know, in fact, in some countries over in the Orient, because the broadband, the internet's not fast enough, they're still buying CDs. But is it growing? Is the music piracy growing worldwide? It seems to have maybe have curtailed a little bit here in the United States, but how big of a problem is it still?
Yeah, no, it's definitely still a problem, especially in other developing countries, because there are certain types of technology out there, like just even websites themselves that can basically kind of rip music, whether it's from YouTube. There's some now that can even do it, rip the music from Spotify. But yeah, unfortunately, it's still a problem. It's definitely still a problem. I wish I had more statistics for you. But yeah, it's still an ongoing problem. particularly not as much here in the U.S. because now there are all these streaming services that, basically almost offer you the music for free. But yeah, it's definitely still an increasing problem.
Let's jump back to YouTube monetization. YouTube, they're in the game. They're now providing royalties, I guess, for the owner of content now. But the big question I always get asked, and we're always trying to find those answers, is what is that rate? What are they paying, and does it differ per project, or how does YouTube determine what they're going to pay for a piece of content that's on their website?
Yeah, that's kind of like the interesting thing, because YouTube has always been one of these, like one of these players that they're not very clear in how they do that, and what these royalties, what the payout is going to be.
I'm glad to hear it's not just me then.
Yeah, no, because they determine it too. There's different factors, and I remember being once in a panel, and there was there was somebody from YouTube there, and somebody asked the same question, and that person was also saying that it's like it depends on, there's advertiser rates that that determine that how much that person spent for that ad that's being viewed, the amount of time that it was viewed as well, the activity that the person viewing the ad did, whether if they saw it completely, whether they clicked on it after a certain time. So they basically were kind of like giving us, I don't want to say the runaround, but yeah, it's like, it seems like it's not like a straightforward answer, that it's like a specific rate, that it was just depending on just kind of different variables on the activity. And
it sounds like YouTube is the one who kind of sets those variables on the activity. Does it fluctuate from number of clicks or likes or views? I bring this up. I was watching a YouTube video last week that had 10 million views on it, but no commercials. And then I clicked on another one that was, 25, 35,000 views, and it had a commercial. Is it because that one video that had 10 million views, has it run its course? Is it tapered off? Or is it something they chose to not have commercials on? Or how does that work?
Well, typically the owner of the channel, that's ultimately who decides if you want to have commercials or not. If that's your, because you can choose to upload videos and content to YouTube, but they don't necessarily have to be monetized. You can decide, you can decide for it, if you want to monetize it or not. But I do, and again, this is, this is completely my opinion on it, but I do believe that because of the, I'm pretty certain that depending on different tiers of where this content, the type of content that it is, the amount of views that it is, and so on, that the quality of the commercial, or let's say of that advertiser increases, if that makes sense.
It does. So with Symphonic Distribution, back in the days when we got out selling CDs and we started selling downloads, the aggregator market was rather small. There weren't a whole lot of either individuals or entities or companies out there that were offering the services that, say the Symphonic Distribution is offering now. Part of that is because the industry was still scratching its head and trying to figure it out. But also we didn't have as many platforms as we did back then. Who seems to be the hot one to go to right now? I read recently where iTunes is going to start branching out more into television, video, film content, and not so much on music, because they've they've lost the download sales, or it's reduced greatly, and because it's now streaming. Spotify seems to have jumped on pretty quickly. Who do you think's going to be the next big platform out there for music to get distributed to?
I think it's, at least for us, even on this scale, like we see it's going to be Spotify for a while, because like at least like on a whole overview, like I was reading these like numbers not too long ago that it's like there's like, let's say like 100 million subscribers for like streaming, and like 50 million of those are just Spotify. And I feel too that that's like, it's the appropriate company too, because I feel that a lot of these, other partners that are out there, let's say like YouTube, Google, like their Google Play, even iTunes, or ultimately Apple, all these companies are not music companies. They're basically technology companies that stumbled on music, and now they're kind of like going on that direction. But if you're going to compare all these stores, then I feel like Spotify, like its origin is a music company. We're, very close with our partners there, whenever we have to like pitch music, and, like we're always kind of like involved and up to speed with everything that's going on. And they were mentioning that, that the CEO's main goal for this coming year is that he wanted for 10,000 artists to live off of Spotify. That was like their goal,
Yeah.
So I'm personally rooting, I'm still kind of rooting for Spotify. There are even trends too, because obviously Spotify is originally from Norway, and it seems also Korea also has a very like advanced or developed streaming market as well, because there's a couple of like streaming services that started there. So there is this data that basically has shown that, like those two specific markets have kind of plateaued already, because like the amount of users that they have has, like at least like the majority of their population has actually kind of, are using the services. So they, like there's these predictions that, there has to be there's going to be another service that's going to come around. What that service is? Yeah, but that player, like that player is still not out in the market. But there's going to be somebody else that's going to be bigger than Spotify. But Spotify is going to be, I predict it's going to be pretty huge.
What do you think about?
And especially because like, go ahead.
What do you think about YouTube Red?
YouTube Red, no, I'm not, it's, like, they're kind of, I think that they're just kind of like jumping on board, again, just to, kind of like a side project from, from YouTube itself, because obviously of the increasing popularity. But at least for us right now, in terms of numbers and how it's looking, Spotify is now, like the bigger player. And we have even clients that are making now as much money as they were in downloads.
Wow.
Obviously, there's going to be always that gap, that for a lot, like for different genres. But I feel that Spotify is going to get into more, because now they even like, let's say they're working with like Headspace. That Headspace is this like app that has to do with like meditation, like providing music for that. And I feel that they're going now with the whole, let's say, just like playlist according to, let's say, to moods, to your moods. And I've even heard, like talk about, them identifying like what moods you're in already, and kind of like providing kind of like the soundtrack to your life. And I don't not, like I do foresee that happening, because they're tailoring, like making this experience, very, very tailored to users. So I, like I wouldn't be surprised. And also, like now that they recently acquired a company that sorry about that, a company that manages more like kind of like on the royalty side of things. Because that's another thing that obviously, all this technology is moving way quicker than all these PROs out there. But PROs are companies that have been established for hundreds of years. And, they were obviously like made to protect, like artists' music. And it's a big pie and it's growing. And I'm sure that they're going to, like once all these issues in terms of like royalties and how they're actually paid, if they're, being paid properly, because to me, the fact that they're going into buying into a company that focuses on, like royalty collection and tracking royalties, says to me that obviously it's something that's, something that they weren't expecting to have to deal with, It's becoming overwhelming.
It's the future of the business is what's happening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That it's becoming overwhelming. So I feel that, like with that set in place, with them being, I think that they are creative and innovators in terms of like how they produce music to you. I'm rooting for them. I think that they're going to grow, and especially, like nowadays too, in addition to that, like Apple on the other side wants everybody in the world to have a smartphone. And, like if you have a smartphone, that's a vehicle there for you to have music. And we see it sometimes even in reports that I'll see like these, like, let's say like, suddenly like we see that Uruguay suddenly has like a bunch of new streams and it's like, growing tremendously. And when I look into it further, it's because they entered a new market, so every time they enter a new market, everybody, is just like running towards it. So it's going to be a pretty interesting, but it's becoming one of those, like, it's too big to fail now,
Yeah. Well, Janette, thank you for being on the show today. Appreciate it. Wealth of information. How does someone listening find your website? How do they find your company?
Yes. So they can find us at symphonicdistribution.com. They can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We're really, really active in there. We also have tons of music too from, we also pay attention to Spotify, so we have a really active profile in there as well with a lot of our artist music. But if I do, encourage if anybody has any questions, or if they just really want to kind of like pick our brains in terms of what they should be doing in their career, I encourage them to call us, give us a call, shoot us an email. That's kind of like one of our things that we kind of distinguish ourselves, in the industry, that, we're really kind of like have a more personalized approach to distribution and are willing to kind of like take a little bit step further to help our clients and see what we can do for them. So yeah. Great. And Bob, thank you very much too for giving us this opportunity to kind of put ourselves out there and, just to chat about the music industry.
It's been a pleasure. Appreciate it. This is Bob Bender, and you've been listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender for Bob Bender Productions. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.